Good evening. Welcome to the Chicago Teachers Union's telephone town hall conversation. My name is Jesse Sharkey. We're going to be beginning our event shortly as more people get on the line. Thank you for joining us tonight. Sisters and brothers, good evening. Welcome to Chicago Teachers Union's telephone town hall conversation. During the course of tonight's broadcast, you'll be able to ask questions. You'll be able to press 0 if you have a question, and we'll try to get you on the air. This is the Chicago Teachers Union's Vice President, Jesse Sharkey. I'm joined by the other officers of the CTU and 2 of our staff. I'd like to go around the table and have them introduce themselves.
Michael Brunson, Chicago Teachers Union Recording Secretary.
Christine Maley, Financial Secretary.
Stacey Davis Gates, Political Director.
Jen Johnson, I work on teacher evaluation issues.
Thank you. I'm speaking tonight to you from the space where you'd normally expect to hear President Karen Lewis. In case you have not heard, Karen is seriously ill. She recently underwent surgery and is recovering well. Please send your continued thoughts and prayers for her. While she recovers, I've taken over the duties of president in accordance with the CTU Constitution and bylaws. Just to be clear, I have not taken over her position. Karen is still the president of the CTU, and she will return to her position at such time as she is able. Karen recently underwent surgery. We respect her privacy and the privacy about her health matters. We've received many questions regarding the exact nature of her illness. We can neither confirm nor deny reports about her illness. That's something that's very important to Karen and her family. However, also important to Karen is that we continue to fight for the city that our children deserve, for the schools that all of our members deserve. And we have important work to do this year in that regard. Our contract expires, and we need a new one. We have to enforce the contract that we already have if people are going to be willing to fight for a new contract. And we also face threats and opportunities in normal politics. Tonight we're going to speak briefly about these 3 subjects. We face many issues in our schools. Our workload is crushing. Our evaluation system is complex and too often arbitrary. We suffer from short staffing. We expect the public campaign to raise these issues around our contract. And we know that we can win public support on these and many other aspects of public education. As I continue to talk about the contract, please remember that you can press 0 if you have a question, and our operators are standing by and we'll try to get you on the air. We're going to talk tonight about some of the things that we're doing as part of our contract fight. We can ask you to go to your delegate to fill out a contract survey. We will ask you to participate in your school's contract action team, attend the CTU's the Chicago Teachers Union's Leadership Convention, details of which are on our website, ctunet.com. We will ask you to wear red on Fridays. In addition to the work that we need to do to win a new contract, we have to enforce the one that we already have. We have to back each other up. Even something as simple as the contract language says that members shall work under safe and healthful conditions will have no meaning if we don't complain, if we don't fight, if we don't try to make that language have meaning to our principals. Many people have complained, for example, about the dirty conditions in schools. Again, that's something which we in our schools have to continue to enforce and make a plan to back each other up. In the realm of politics, we face both challenge and opportunity. Challenges like Rahm and Rauner. We have the opportunity, though, to limit Rahm's power by fighting for an elected representative school board, by fighting to elect allies in the city council, or our own members who are running in a number of wards. We're going to ask CTU members to volunteer to canvass, to attend a lead dinner, and to raise money for the CTU's Political Action Fund. Over the course of this call, if you're willing to volunteer to petition for the elected representative school board or canvass for our CTU members, we're going to ask you to press 1, and a staff member will contact you. So again, thank you for joining us in the CTU Telephone Town Hall, and I'm going to begin by taking Diane. Diane, you're on the air.
Hi, yes. My name is Diane, and I was just calling, I just wanted to say that I wish Karen the best wishes with her health and everything. And I do understand that this cause is not about one person. However, I'm just really heartbroken that she has fallen ill, and I just hope and pray that she has a speedy recovery.
Thank you, Diane. I know that the wishes of support have been pouring in. The mailbox is full of cards. The email box has been overloaded, and that's what we need now. She needs your hopes and prayers. The support is very meaningful to her and all of us. I appreciate that, and I really do want to say that the work that Karen has dedicated herself to is, the work of this union, the work of the public schools. That cause continues. Karen has carried a heavy load, but there comes a time when someone has to put down that load and take care of their own health. Then it remains for us to pick up that load and keep carrying it. So that's what we're all going to do. And remember, if you have a question, press 0, and we'll try to get you on the air. I'd like to go now to Christine. Christine?
Hi, this is Christine. I was just wondering if the union had a plan B. My well wishes go out to Karen. I love her. We went through national board together and several other things, and I know she's a fighter. But I'm wondering if there's a plan B as far as a mayoral candidate from the union or somebody that they're backing.
Christine, thank you for that question. I know it's on a lot of people's minds. I'd actually like to ask Stacey Davis Gates, our political director, to fill us in a little bit on that question.
The CTU has always been about building power, door to door, member to member, and neighbor to neighbor. That work will continue. Every weekend we have canvases in which we are building support for members and allies who are running. We have a whole progressive caucus that we will be supporting and members who are running as well. But like any other electoral process that's ever happened in this union, our political action committee will have to weigh in on it. So all candidates will still have to go through the process of completing a questionnaire, having it scored by our rank and file members, and going through an interview process. We are not yet ready to concede that 2015, February 24th, 2015, is still not the hottest race in the nation. So you should look for our rank and file members on the PAC committee to continue to weigh in electorally.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm a special ed teacher from Woodson Elementary. My question is regarding the upcoming. My question is regarding the upcoming revisions to the new contract. Will there be a contract committee, or will there be any input that will come from special ed teachers, specifically special ed teachers that work with the low incidence population? A lot of issues that we deal with have not been addressed in previous contracts, and I would hope that they would be addressed in the new contract.
Thank you for the question, Elizabeth. I'm going to speak broadly about the process, and then I'd like to ask Christine Maley, our financial secretary, to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the special ed concerns. Basically, the way contract negotiations work in our union is that we've already begun a formal process in which we go out to the members with contract surveys, ask members to fill out contract surveys, and hopefully that's happened in your school. And if it hasn't, that's something you should speak to your delegate about. Surveys have been distributed. Also, the union has about 20 rank-and-file committees that work in specific areas of education. So, for example, we have a special education committee, and we have tasked those committees with working to develop contract language to address the specific concerns around things like special ed. Christine, would you like to add to the question?
Yeah, Elizabeth, this is Christine. I have the pleasure of being the liaison to the special ed committees. There's various committees all over the place. If you'd like to get on board with some of them, we will be looking at contract demands. We're also looking at broadening the work of the committee, especially with the special ed group. We want to partner with parents, we want to partner with students, and we want to start working on changing the laws, or changing the policies of CPS. We know that they have not been following special ed law, and parents are our best allies on some of these things, so we really want to get them involved, but also our contract language getting strengthened is a big, big part of it.
Thank you. Remember, please press 0 if you have a question. We'll certainly take questions about the politics of the city and the challenges faced in that arena. We'd like to hear questions about what's going on at your school, about your struggles to enforce the contract, and questions you might have about the contract process that comes up next year or this coming school year. So remember, please press 0 if you have a question, and we'll try to get you on the air. And I'd next like to go to John from Wells. John?
Hello?
Hello, John.
Hello?
You're on the air.
Hi. My question revolves around the teacher quality pool. Is there any way that we can maybe modify that in the next contract? I'm a displaced teacher. I've got 18 years in, and that's kind of been a big drag for some of us who are senior teachers, I'll say, or veteran teachers, I'll say.
John, I thank you for the question. I appreciate the question. The original goal behind the teacher quality pool was to create a pool which our displaced members would get into automatically by virtue of the fact that they had either won tenure or had been well rated in a Chicago public school, but that would slow down the ability of the district to bring in new hires off the street. And that it was intended as a way to try to encourage principals to hire people who had proven experience in CPS. I'm very interested to hear about stories in the teacher quality pool where it's not being used for that or where it's being used for the opposite effect, and that is certainly something which we'll be looking at in these upcoming contract negotiations. I'd like to hear now from Patrice.
Hi. First, best to Karen Lewis. We're all thinking about her. Also, one of the questions that had come up was in this contract we have, is the last paragraph says that we could possibly extend this current contract one more year if we agreed and CPS agreed. Is that true, and is that something that anyone else is thinking about or asking about?
Thank you. Yes. Article 49 says that in the spring of this coming year, so in the spring of 2015, the board could look at its budget and say, we think that we could afford another raise and offer us a 3% raise. However, to extend the contract with the same terms for another year. It would then be up to the Chicago Teachers Union, to our executive board, our House of Delegates, and ultimately to the membership about whether or not we wanted to take that raise and not negotiate about any of the other issues which we have in the schools, or reject that raise, and then in which case the contract would expire on June 30th. Our current agreement is set to expire on June 30th of this current school year. To be honest with you, the money that the board could potentially offer us, and I say potentially because I have no idea if they actually intend to do that or not, but if they were to do that, I think that our union would have to think long and hard before we took a whole number of important issues off the table. Because frankly, there's things that I believe are more important to us than just a raise. What good is a raise if they close your school and you lose your job? What good is a raise if you're being crushed by your workload, if your evaluation system is so complex and arbitrary that you're getting pushed out of your career? So it's certainly something that is a potential. It was put in there as a face-saving measure for Rahm Emanuel, but it's something which we would certainly have be part of a whole citywide conversation. That's never something that we would accept or that we even legally could accept without going through a process with our membership and the House of Delegates. So I'd like now to go to Tara.
Hi.
Hello, Tara?
Yes.
Hi there.
Hi. I have a question about the REACH assessment for last year, the ratings that haven't come out yet. I was non-renewed based on a suspected or so-called projected REACH evaluation score after only two observations. In the letter that I received, it says that if your final score as a PET comes back proficient, you'll be reinstated if the position is still there. My question right now is the union doing anything to, inspire CPS to get those evaluations done? Because they're still not out yet.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Tara. That's been a real frustration for us as well. And I'm going to turn to this question for Jennifer Johnson, who specializes on a number of issues having to do with evaluation. Jen.
Sarah, thank you for raising this issue. We're just as frustrated as you are. Waiting 5 months for a performance rating is unprofessional and unacceptable and sends the wrong message to educators. As far as teachers who are non-renewed in the spring, CPS has this system of projections, and so they based your projection on a series of calculations and the observations, like you said, that you had so far. In most cases, we do oversee the renewal process when a teacher is brought back to the classroom if their projection is wrong. For the last couple of years, it's been a very small number of teachers, but please be in touch with me, be in touch with the CTU, and we'll make sure that if you are entitled to your position back, we'll be in touch with you. We've been pressing through the Joint Evaluation Committee, which is a contractually created committee in Article 39. We meet with the board every 2 weeks and discuss these issues, and in many cases, we share your ire with them. Some of the issues are stemming from technology and contracting and outsourcing. The website that is run by True North Logic is an outside contractor. The University of Wisconsin is an outside group that calculates the VAM scores. So, the delay has to do with this being a new system, but also some of the ways in which CPS decides to outsource their work. And this is an issue that we are committed to continuing to fight against, and we're going to keep you well informed as to when the ratings are going to come out, and clearly this is going to be a big topic for upcoming contract negotiations. We look for your input on Article 39 in other ways as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd next like to hear from Allison.
Hey, Jesse, it's Allison. Actually, my question was about the fourth-year renewal, so I'm okay.
Okay, so we just answered your question? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, next I'd like to hear from Ariel.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Ariel.
Hi, how are you? Being a person who came from being in a charter school where I got paid from August to August, then converting over to CPS last year where it was a big change where we weren't getting paid in the summer. For a lot of teachers, especially teachers who are new to this way of payment, it was kind of hard during the summer. So I was wondering, during the contract renewal, are we going to talk about that? Is that something that is going to possibly be changed, or would it stay the same? Because I remember before you had that option of actually getting paid throughout the summer or getting all your money at once.
Right, you're talking about deferred pay. Sure, let me talk about that. I mean, in fact, deferred pay is something which everyone got put on whether you wanted it or not, and it was something which to be honest with you, very evenly split our membership, which some members liked it because they got a steady check throughout the year, and other members hated it because CPS held their money for them, did not pay them interest, did not give them an option about whether they would do that or not, and then apportion their own money back after them over the course of the summer. It's something which we got rid of in the last contract, partly because we are so sick of the mistakes and the missed payments from the Chicago Public Schools payroll department. People had a very hard time calculating their checks because there were constantly both deductions being made from checks and there were additional payments being made, and it became very hard to figure out what the right amount that you were actually being paid was. I know this is in the first year of this being implemented, it created some real hardships for folks, especially given the incredibly late nature of the first first pay period this year. It's certainly something that we can look at again. Everything is on the table, although I will say that this is an issue where there's strong feelings on both sides. So thank you. I'd like to hear now from Barbara.
Hello, my name is Barbara Powell, and I'm calling as a retired teacher. Are there going to be some changes in the contract with our requirement for subbing in the schools? This year, the board called me to sub, but would not tell us where we were going. So we never know what location, north, south, east, or west. And they would call at 5:30 in the morning. I think we need to really review that. So if you live on the west side, you wouldn't want to go to the south side. Or if you lived on the south side, you wouldn't want to go way to the west. You couldn't get there in time when they would call.
I appreciate that concern. The board did implement a new computer system for subbing ASOP, which has had a lot of problems with implementation. That's certainly something that we'll take a look at. I know that another big concern that we've had about subs is a simple lack of subs. And there's many schools who have a real shortage. So if there's professional development going on, or if teachers are involved in one-on-one testing or helping to test special ed students, they just cannot get help in the classroom, meaning that people have to skip preps, people have to basically they miss getting coverage, and that also is producing a real problem. And I do want to mention that the CTU has recently had a big win for cadre substitutes, in which we've won over 600 new cadre substitutes as part of an arbitration case. And but I hear you loud and clear. The board really needs to fix some of the messed up procedures that they have around substitute teaching. Thank you. Jennifer, are you there? Do you have a question?
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and my issue is with evaluations and Domain 4. I've gone to trainings and been trained by my network, but I've noticed some quality control issues with it, and I guess I'm concerned about how are we going to ensure that principals are not entering inaccurate information or using the evidence that they're gathering in a punitive manner.
Good question. Jennifer, would you like to talk about this?
Hi, Jennifer. Great name. So there's a lot of issues, obviously, with evaluation because it's never going to be entirely objective, right? When we have human beings involved in a human process, we can't get completely objective results. The framework for teaching is meant to be the guiding principles of what the ratings and the scores should be. So the language of Domain 4 and all of its components are very important. So first I want to urge teachers to make sure that you're familiar and comfortable with the language in those components of Domain 4. We have to be the advocates for ourselves, and we have to help one another know the criteria by which we are evaluated. There should not be any additional local school criteria created at the school level. The language in the framework is what's supposed to guide the scoring. It's supposed to be based on a preponderance of evidence, okay? And something that was built into the process for the first time last year was a feedback window, which allowed educators to provide narratives for their Domain 4 components. And then the evaluators were supposed to respond with feedback. That's our moment, really, in the early spring, late winter, to get a sense of what the evaluator is thinking, and we need to hold the evaluators to participating in the feedback process. I know a lot of evaluators did not provide feedback last year. We need our PPCs, our delegates, and our members to know that this feedback period exists and to hold their evaluators to participating so that our members have more transparency in the process and have a sense of what they need to do before the end of the year if they need to see an increase in their scores for Domain 4. Please be sure to save all of your documentation, and if you're experiencing any particularly difficult situations, please make sure you contact myself or other CTU staff.
Thank you, Jen. For those of you who have joined the call since the time that we introduced it, my name is Jesse Sharkey. I'm the Chicago Teachers Union Vice President. I'm joined by others from our officers and also from the CTU staff, and we're speaking to you tonight about what's going on with President Lewis and also about a number of the challenges that are facing our union. In case you have not heard, Karen is seriously ill. She recently underwent surgery and is recovering well. We ask that you please send your continued thoughts and prayers for her. And while she recovers, I have taken over the duties of the President in accordance with the CTU Constitution and bylaws. To be clear, I have not taken over her position. Karen is still the President, and she will return to her position at some time as she is able. In the meantime, it's important for us to remember that just as Karen is fighting for her health, we must continue fighting for the schools and the city that Chicago's children deserve. Our contract expires this year, and bargaining for a new one begins soon. We ask that members participate in the activities at their school that are designed to build this campaign. Fill out contract surveys, join the school's contract action team, wear red on Fridays, and build unity every chance that we get. We also face a challenge and opportunity in the realm of politics. From Rahm to Rauner, the threats are huge, but the CTU is playing a more important role than at any time in memory. We ask that you help gather signatures for the elected representative school board, canvass for our members and allies who are running for aldermen, and contribute to the CTU's Political Action Fund. Also, don't forget the Chicago Teachers Union Lead Dinner, which is coming up on Friday, October 31st. Please buy a table. Tickets are $50 a piece. That will be an incredibly exciting and important event, and one that I know Karen was really looking forward to. We're going to send her a video of that event if she's asked about it. finally, I know that many of you hearing this have worked mightily for public education, for children, for the CTU. This has been our work and our cause. It's never an easy challenge when someone who's so important to our work needs to take a step back, as Karen has done now. She was carrying so much of the burden, but she must put it down for a while and take care of her health. For us, we're left to pick up that load where Karen left it and continue to carry it. That is what we must do. So thank you for joining us in this call. We're going to continue to take questions. But before I go to Brad, I just want to remind people on the line that you can ask a question by pressing 0, and that will connect you to one of our operators, and we'll try to get you on the air. So, Brad, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm from Curie High School. I'm one of the counselors there. My question is, will we be fighting for kind of a fair and equal student-to-counselor ratio, hopefully somewhere near 250 students to 1? And one other question, if at all possible in the contract, if we can have defined job description where it certainly does not mention that we can teach classes or cover classes, and provided a lunch, an actual defined lunch period and prep period.
Brad, thank you for your concern. The way that Chicago Public Schools use counselors is really a travesty. So for example, many high school counselors who work in schools where there's a real need for violence prevention, where students have the real need to have counselors that can do social and emotional work with those students, are used instead as administrators who for example, administer tests and make sure that standardized tests are done properly. At the elementary school, again, many counselors are used as administrators around special ed casework, and it's a travesty. The issue really about counseling for the Chicago Public Schools gets down to money. It gets down to the question about whether or not we can free counselors up to counsel by hiring other staff that we need to do those other administrative jobs, or whether counselors have to always have extra responsibilities heaped on them that keep them from actually doing what they're trained to do, which is counsel. I'd like to have Michael Brunson, CTU's recording secretary, talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in terms of getting some revenue into the schools. Michael?
Hello, Brad. This is Michael Brunson, recording secretary. One of the things that we so often hear, every year we hear, Chicago Public Schools crying broke. They always cry about having $1 billion deficit and having to cut here and cut there. We here at Chicago Teachers Union, we have some really good ideas that they need to follow. We have 3 basic revenue ideas that will not only bring in millions of dollars, but over $1 billion, but billions of dollars if they would listen to us. And that's why we need our members to advocate with us to do these things. I'm going to talk about 3 things very briefly. The TIPS, which are tax increment financing, the swaps, which we are trying to get CPS to renegotiate, and the LaSalle Street tax. First of all, the TIPS. The TIPS are basically tax money that is collected by the city over the cap when the price of the real estate increases, and our mayor keeps that money in a personal slush fund. In January of 2014, there was about $1.7 billion accumulated in TIP funds that the mayor had at his personal use. Now, he found, once he accumulated all that money, he had a fire sale and found a way to get it down to about $49 billion. Bear in mind that when this money is accumulated, the CPS as a taxing body is owed 52% of it. So if we would have went after the whole $1.7 billion, that would have been almost $1 billion right there. And we, that's just on the TIPS alone. So we really need to make people aware of what's going on with this TIP scam, and we need to advocate for transparency on that. The next thing is that Chicago Public Schools has entered into what we call toxic swaps. I won't go into details of that, but this is where we are losing, Chicago Public Schools is losing about $36.5 million a year. It's cost us $237 million so far, and we are trying to get Chicago Public Schools to arbitrate out of this deal. They have done it in other parts of the country, and if we advocate with that, with your assistance, once again, all of our members, we can push CPS to bring in money on there. And finally, the mother lode is the financial transaction tax. You know, we're asking that Wall Street pay their fair share. We don't have to go to the national Wall Street. Right here we have Chicago Mercantile Exchange that processes over 125 million contracts a day. If we were to have them taxed $1 or $2, the buyer and the seller of each one of these contracts, we could bring in as much as $10 to $12 billion a year. This is at a statewide level. This is not only something that is going to help our schools, but it's going to be money for pensions, more education, our social safety net, and all of that. So we have a few good ideas, but we just need to push the political wheel to move in our direction so that we can bring this money back into Chicago Public Schools and they can stop crying broke every year.
Thank you, Mike. That was a long answer to what seems like a very straightforward question, but I promise that there are so many ways in which the starvation of our schools, the fact that they're not getting the resources they need, ties into our everyday work life. I've got Karina next. Karina, you have a question? No? I guess she's gone from the line. Joan, are you there?
Hi, this is Joan. I'm a citywide nurse. I work at the St. Enric Over and 4 other schools that I work at. And my question was really, like everything else, our workload is going up, up, up. And I know, where are we in terms of developing any language that would be presented in contract language in terms of workload for the clinicians, for all the citywide clinicians? I know we lost 11 nurses in the north side area last year. They didn't hire any, or I think maybe 2. So that's really my question. Where are we at? Because they're just really increasing our workload.
Yes, thank you, Joan. I know it's a real concern. It was certainly something that we put into the contract last time, a workload committee, and actually Christine Maley is on that committee. I'd like to have her speak to the issues a bit. Christine?
Hey, Joan. Yeah, we did get contract language last time, and it has not been as effective as we had hoped. For clinicians especially, clinicians and special ed teachers, I've been hearing from you guys. I understand the committees have been working really hard to craft proposals. The special ed committee in particular, we've drafted proposals for the board taking into account an actual formula of how many minutes it takes you to service the students on your caseload. The board's rejected everything that we've given them. We've made counter proposals. We're in the process of doing that. The clinicians, on the other hand, they've had a little bit more luck. They actually have a meeting tomorrow night where they're talking about this, and they're working on drafting a plan, taking into account, you got to remember that the entire special education department staff has just been replaced pretty much. So they're getting the new hires at CPS up to speed on what clinicians actually do, and then they're going to prepare them. They're telling them what kids actually need of their clinicians and trying to work out a way to spread the work out a little bit more fairly. This is going to take a big push from both the members and the parents of our kids with special education needs. We got to keep the pressure on them because what they're doing is illegal. It's not fair to our students or our members that are trying to service these kids in impossible situations. So keep the pressure up, keep the parents aware, and Susan Hickey, who's chairing that committee, will be sending updates to the clinician delegates as we get them.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone on the call, thank you for joining us, first of all. And remember to press 0 if you have a question. We have operators standing by. We'll try to get you on the air. And I have Jean next. Jean?
Hello?
Hello, Jean. You're on the air. Hello, Jean? You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I'm Jean Archer's Blaine School, and there has been some talk about opting out of there's some push in the community to opt out of certain testing, be it NWEA, the PARCC, or the REACH assessment. My concern is if the principal was to present to the staff that there's a possibility we don't give the reach. How does that affect our evaluation? Because I know the reach is part of our evaluation. Is that something that can even be questioned?
I would need to know a little bit more about exactly which test parents were talking about opting out of. But as a father of 2 kids in the public schools, I guess I would start by saying this, that to the extent that there's a conversation or a place where you can talk to parents who are involved in this work, that's a very good place to start. A lot of parents are rightfully upset about the amount of testing, and I know, frankly, a lot of teachers are upset about the amount of testing as well. It's certainly legitimate to say, I'm worried if my best test takers are opting out of a test that in turn is going to be used to rate me. That's a conversation that we would do well to start having with parents. My guess is that many parents are not doing this to hurt their children's teachers. They're doing it because they're frustrated by the testing regime just the same way we are. I guess I'd ask Jen if she's got anything to add to that. Jen?
I would just say that we have to respect the wishes of our parents, and that parents are allowed to get information, and they should reach out to organizations in Chicago like More Than a Score. We certainly would support our members in making sure that their ratings through the REACH process are valid, and we would fight to make sure that any invalid data or insufficient data would not negatively impact our members.
Thank you. I've got Maria next. Maria?
Hi,
Hello, Maria?
I had a question. Hi, how are you? I had a question about the way the budget is worked out for staffing. So as a tenured teacher, and many tenured teachers were always in jeopardy of losing our job for economic reasons. And what we've noticed over time is that more Teach for America teachers have been hired in our schools. And so I was wondering if anything is being addressed for the contract to look at those issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I'll say what it is. Student-based budgeting has placed a premium for principals trying to spend less money on teachers by hiring less experienced staff. And I've heard a number of horror stories from highly skilled veteran teachers who are told by principals, I'd love to hire you, I just simply can't, you're too expensive. Which is a crazy thing to say because it means that the qualified teachers who principals need to hire in order to provide a high quality education for kids aren't being hired because a principal can save $5,000 or $15,000 by hiring someone fresh out of school. And so that is really an unacceptable situation for us. I will say that it really raises a number of political issues because the right to decide how they allocate budget dollars is a right that the board gets as a management right. It's something which comes through politics, and it's not something which in the contract alone we're going to solve, but it is something which I think we very much need to solve, and we need to do that by raising political issues around this and around the whole question of properly funding high-quality schools. It's been a little while since we've talked about politics, and I'd actually like to ask Stacey Davis Gates to come in a little bit on some of the union's political work and reemphasize some of the points that we've been making about the importance of what's going on in the state and municipal elections. Stacey?
So a couple of things. I think that the CTU has gained the authentic trust of Chicago when it comes to education issues. They trust us, which makes sense to us because we're the ones charged to care for their children on a daily basis. We've expanded that by ensuring that the issues that we advocate for are stretched to our community. So when we hear something like 20,000 homeless students, we can connect that immediately to the fact that affordable housing is unavailable in the city. And so in doing so, 2014 is upon us, and we know that the Rahm-Ronner connection will not work for us, quite frankly. And it is important that we get out the vote, that we make sure that we're stomping for Governor Quinn, and that on November 4th, not only are we voting, but we're also at the polling places making sure that elected representative school board petitions, our members' petitions are being signed, simultaneously leafleting and making sure that people are going to the polls. Governor Quinn has said very clearly that if elected representative school board is on his desk, he will sign it, and it will become law. That is specifically a policy issue with regard to school-based budgeting that would have a second look, that would be more critical. So when Jesse speaks about politics and that being a part of our overall work here at the union, what he means is that every single Saturday we are building power door to door, asking people to sign elected representative school board petitions so it's on the ballot in all 50 wards of this city. He's also saying that on Saturday we're having a leadership convention where we will strengthen and lift up our leaders in this union to fight for the contract we deserve. But overall, we're fighting for the Chicago all of our students deserve. So that's a contract, that's a well-resourced classroom, and that is a city and state government that responds appropriately to school funding issues, class size issues, and issues of revenue, quite frankly.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacy. And I mentioned before, I'll mention it again, if you're willing to volunteer to petition for the elected representative school board or canvass for CTU members, press 1 on your phone now, and a CTU staff member will contact you. Won't contact you right away, but sometime in the next couple of days, that could be a way for us to collect volunteers for people who are willing to do some of that political work. Thank you. I'd like to just reemphasize our leadership convention this weekend. Stacy mentioned it, but we're having a meeting at North Grand High School. You can sign up at the ctunet.com to get more information about that and to sign up online. That's going to be a leadership convention this Saturday on the October 18th. And I'd like to next go to Melanie. Melanie, you have a question?
Hi. I have a question. I heard a little bit about it, but about malicious reassignment, and if the new contract can better protect us tenured teachers that, yes, do cost more money, because I was replaced by a first-year teacher, not a Teach for America, just a first-year teacher.
Okay, sure. We did, in fact, put language in that was designed to guard against malicious reassignment, in which the new contract language says that if a principal is going to reassign someone to a new class, they're supposed to have a pedagogical reason for it. Again, if a principal moves a person from one class to another, and as long as that move is on a teacher certificate area, so let's say, for example, you're moving a teacher with with a high school endorsement in more than one subject, and they're endorsed to teach both English and social studies, and you move them from an English program to a social studies program, the principal can do that. I know that many times principals do it in order to be malicious, in order to make a teacher teach in an area where they haven't taught in a long time or they're uncomfortable. And that is something, like I said, we try to address, but it's a difficult issue in that principals have a right to assign their staff. And this starts to get into questions about to what extent we back each other up in a building. We have language in the contract that could address this, but the language becomes much more effective if the teachers in a school, if the staff at a school have an active PPC, if there's a delegate who speaks up, if there's people who can make a plan, and that's a situation in which the union can try to help. That's very important that we back each other up. Too often principals do this, and other teachers go along with it, keep their head down, hope, well, it's happening to this other person, at least it's not happening to me. But when that happens, it weakens all of us, and it will happen to everyone next. So it's something which we're going to have to keep fighting around. Amber.
Hi, I think actually my question was answered, because mine too was in regards to this bare bones budget. In terms of friends that I know that are tenured, they can't get jobs because they're told they're too expensive, and so I think mine was kind of answered.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. We're aware it's a big concern. The truth of the matter is that all of us who are educators know that a school really needs a mix of veterans, experienced teachers who really know their way around the craft, people who are in the middle of their careers, and then people who are entering into the career. I mean, we all enter our careers at one point and are new teachers at one point. So schools need a mix of that, but we're seeing that mix really being distorted by the fact that principals' budgets are so squeezed, and even the principals are upset about it. And it just goes back to political questions that we have about there must be revenue for our schools. You know, if every time Rahm turns around, you know, his billionaire friends want to give him $9.5 million to run for re-election, as if dollars were the most important thing in this vote, and that dollars had power in and of themselves, spoke for themselves, we have to say they don't. And what people are really trying to buy there is a friend in power that will keep them from being taxed, is a friend in power who will keep them from having to pay their share and make public schools into truly public institutions. It goes equally along with the idea that we have a mayor who could appoint a school board. We can take power away from that mayor if we elect our allies in city council, and we can take power away from that mayor if we have an elected representative school board, which is why we're out there working for that. So I'm sorry to go off on that, but that's a really important subject. And I've got Gary next. Gary, you have a question?
Hello. I'm curious as to how one becomes part of the negotiating team.
You would send a letter to President Lewis asking to be on it. The negotiating team is comprised of a large bargaining team. We're going to have about 45 people on it this year. At the heart of it, it's the executive board, which is elected. We are taking some additional spots because we want to make sure that it's widely representative, that it's geographically representative, that it represents the different demographics in the school system, the different job functions. And so we're going to start with the e-board because it's a widely representative body, and we're going to look at it to see if it needs to be enhanced in any way. So if you're interested in that, please do send an email to President Lewis. As you know, someone else will be reading that email. Her assistant will. It'll likely get forwarded to me, but that will be the way you could try to be on it. Thank you. And I've got Tori next. Tori?
Yes. I just have a question about is there any language in the contract about teacher workload?
There is language about special education workload, and there's language in the contract about the length of the instructional day for elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, and high school teachers. And there's also language in the contract about paperwork. I know right now a lot of our work comes in the form of just insane paperwork requirements. These are all concerns because I think if I hear a single concern and complaint from our members out in the schools, and I've been getting out in schools as much as I can, it's that the workload is crushing, that people are putting in 12 or 14-hour days, one after the other after another. And there aren't enough hours in the day for people to have regular lives. There aren't time for people to decompress. The stuff is too hard to be working 14 hours a day, day in, day out, and always feel like you're behind. So it's something which is not easily addressed. We did add language in it. There have been some schools where there's a professional problems committee at the school that has been somewhat successful in taking on a principal and saying the language in the contract says if you add paperwork, the principal has to take other paperwork, an equivalent amount off your plate. We can certainly come back to that language again, but for people who are being just put upon by too much paperwork, talk to your fellow teachers and your staff at your school. Make a plan. Bring it in front of your PPC. We certainly will come back to it in the contract, but I would urge people not to simply wait for the contract to try to solve this problem. We have to start complaining about it, organizing around it, and fighting around it now. And so I have Lucille next. Lucille, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Lucille.
This is not a current contract issue. As a retired teacher, I have a question about the pension reform bill.
Sure.
How will it affect the retired teachers in the long run, and will it reduce our cost of living increase?
Well, right now, the pension reform bill, which was forced through for the downstate teachers, if it's found to be constitutional, and we hope that it won't be, would affect both teachers who are currently working, not yet retired, and also teachers who are who already retired. The question of how we stop them from getting a similar kind of bill aimed at us through is something that I would like to pass to our political director, Stacey Davis Gates. Stacey?
Hi. So we are confident that the Constitution will be upheld and that the pension reform that was done to our paraprofessionals this past legislative session, as well as to the state employees and teachers, that will be found unconstitutional. The bright light that happened over this past summer is that state retirees took a case to court in which the Supreme Court ruled that a benefit cannot be diminished even if it's a health care subsidy. And so we read that language in the decision to provide a great deal of encouragement that the members of the Supreme Court, the Illinois State Supreme Court, will uphold our benefit. Beyond that, we will continue to wage a legislative fight to maintain our constitutionally protected benefit. So I hate to, be a broken record, but that goes back to building power, door to door, member to member. Every Saturday, we are out canvassing for elected representative school board. Every Saturday, we are out canvassing for our members. We have a delegates convention that is coming up, and a leadership convention that is coming up on the 18th. All of these things are critically important because we must begin to engage our parents, our communities, our families, and that our schools are our own. The way that policy decisions are made because our politicians are disconnected and out of touch with the real needs of our community. So when we say that power begins from the bottom up, we intend to continue expressing that. We implore you to visit ctunet.com, look at the Canvas opportunities, and join in.
Okay, thank you. I guess I would also just add this, that for all these questions, the pension in particular, it really comes to revenue. That what they're doing to us on pensions is they're pitting the payments, which they never made into the pension fund, but now are finally coming due. They're pitting that money, the need for funding there, against all the other social services that this state needs to provide for people. And if they can say that, there's not enough money, so this is about paying for teachers' retirements versus paying for home heating oil subsidies for poor people during the winter, that makes us seem like the bad guys. And it really highlights for us the importance of working on revenue. Michael, remind people what's going on with the revenue picture.
Well, please be aware that whenever you hear the mayor or someone from Chicago Public Schools talk about, having to make sacrifices and hard choices, they're usually talking about placing the burden of a budget deficit upon our backs. We need to turn this back on them. We have a few revenue ideas that we need all of our members to be aware of. We're going to be pushing it through various venues. We're going to make everyone aware of it. We want to start talking about tax increment financing, which are tips. Everyone should be aware of what we mean by that. These are excess taxes above and beyond what are already collected and directed to our taxing bodies that go into the mayor's personal sludge fund. We also have the toxic swaps, which Chicago Public Schools has engaged in, that is leaking tens of millions of dollars out of the system every year, money that should be going into our classrooms. And finally, we have we're trying to get everyone familiar with the idea of a financial transaction tax. We've made it our own. We call it the LaSalle Street tax, something that can bring in $10 to $12 billion annually. As a matter of fact, if you want to find out more about the financial transaction tax, there's going to be a forum this Thursday at 6:30 in Bessemer Park on 89th and Muskegon. You will hear what the financial transaction tax is, or the LaSalle Street tax, and you'll be able to participate and ask questions. There's more information to be found on that on our website.
Thank you. I'd like next to go to Denisha. Denisha?
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Darnisha, and I was calling. My question actually got answered about the REACH evaluation for 2013-2014.
Okay, thank you. Because we're getting short on time, we've had almost 7,000 people on this call. I'm going to go to the next question then. Rhonda?
Yes, it's Rhonda. A 35-year CP. I'm a CPS retiree. I spent my 35 years at Hyde Park. I'm still very interested in the union and wanted to find out what language was going to be in the upcoming contract for the two issues that I feel are the most key. One is class size. I think it's been pushed aside by all the ridiculous policies that the board has put on us, and I think it's essential that that be in the forefront. The other issue is evaluations. Evaluations should not be based on test scores, especially non-core teachers' evaluations based on core test scores. For our students, elective courses can be the pathway to careers, and I believe that if you have a evaluation system as it is now, you're going to discourage not only highly qualified teachers, but teachers who can provide excellent training in these elective areas. And I myself would not have chosen a challenging school if I thought that my evaluation was going to be based on the test scores of my school.
Rhonda, thank you for that question. I couldn't agree with you more on both issues. Look, on the question of class size, it's a reform that's proven effective. The research says that class size reductions are one of the surest ways to improve students' literacy and math skills, especially when those class size reductions are targeted towards the early primary years, K through 3. It's an expensive reform. It's a reform that requires, funding room in schools. It's ironic in Chicago they closed schools for being undercrowded. they called it underutilized. In the suburbs, they would say that's that a school with 15 or 20 students in a classroom is just the way you'd like it to be. Here in Chicago, they targeted those schools and closed many. And the result of that is that there's many teachers are beginning to complain about having elevated class sizes. It's certainly something which is a big concern. As far as evaluation, absolutely, we opposed the use of test scores and test score metrics, especially value added, to be used for teachers, but for teacher evaluation, it's not an accurate or valid way to evaluate teachers. It also, I don't think, sort of brings in the full breadth of what we should be training students to know and be able to do. And so you think, for example, about how many students in Chicago graduate, have time finding work. At the same time, we're having a city that's hiring contractors, that's hiring electricians, people who do work on HVAC, work on cars, etc. Our city is hiring folks that do that from the suburbs. The career and technical education training programs in the Chicago public schools have been left to wither on the vine. I think it's part of the same problem. Those things need to be really made more robust. Jen, you've got a quick minute. Go ahead.
I want to remind folks that the research is there. Value added is a junk science. We'd be happy to provide literature that you could use to discuss with parents. I also want to just remind folks that we have had some wins because we are using data to chip away at the use of standardized tests. Pre-K through second grade teachers will no longer have value-added measures included in their evaluation rating starting this year. But remember that the evaluation procedures and the inclusion of standardized tests are results of legislative work. In 2010, the Performance Evaluation Reform Act was passed by the state legislature. This just drives home how important our political work is. I hope to see you Saturday at the Leadership Convention. I'd be happy to talk to you more in our 2 workshops on evaluation this Saturday. Please go to ctunet.com to sign up.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who got on our call tonight. As I mentioned before, we had almost 7,000 people joining us. There were dozens of people on the speaker queue who aren't going to get a chance to get their questions heard. I'm going to have time for one last question. But if you didn't get a chance to get on the line, if you stay on the line, you can leave a message, and someone from the CTU staff will go through and listen to those messages and try to get back to you about your question. I'd like to let Georgia Waller from Beard School have the last word. Georgia?
Hi, how you doing, Jesse?
I'm hanging in there, Georgia. It's been a tough week.
Oh, that's good. First, I want to send my prayers out to Karen, but I also want to send my prayers out to you guys, because this has got to be a very difficult time. And for all the CTU members that are still listening, and still out there, now is the time where we need to step up. We need to have the courage to support these people. We have a wounded warrior out there in the field. Let's pick her up. Let's move forward. Let's fight. When someone is down, we fight twice as hard. My question is this: are we going to look at the loopholes, the specific loopholes under a fine microscope that CPS has been able to use to manipulate things like evaluation, dismissal of staff, those types of things, before we sit down and come up with contract questions for later? I think we really need to take a look at that and go through that first and see what.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Georgia. Let me answer the question. Our time is almost up. Thank you. We love you too. In fact, we love everyone who makes this union into such a strong institution that keeps it strong. And we have to remember that this fight goes on even while we keep Karen in our hearts and minds. In fact, yes, we have charged the committees, all 20 of them, the rank and file committees that deal with the specific parts of the work in CPS, to go through with a fine-tooth comb and look at the issues that are causing us to lose grievances and lose arbitrations. We've assigned individual staff members from our grievance department to work with those committees, and absolutely, that's something we have to be very specific about, be very detail-oriented about, because we have a big fight ahead of us, Sister and Brothers. Thank you for coming on the call tonight. Good night.